Please welcome to the stage Rob Roy, the founder and CEO of Switch, a company with a very important footprint in this state. Thanks for being with us.
No, thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah, this is great timing. Let's jump right in. Just today, NVIDIA and Microsoft announced that they are investing a cool $15 billion in Anthropic. And honestly, we're seeing a lot of these kinds of moves. So I got to ask, is this a bubble?
You're going to ask that to everybody that comes up? Is everybody today going to ask me if it's a bubble? Yeah. And I'll jump in maybe and explain that, because we have this timing. I'll go a little fast. You know, I started Switch in 2000, just in time for the dot-com time frame to auger straight into the ground. We went through 2008. If you look at how those bubbles came about, though, there were things like Broadwing building a $1.7 billion network through the western United States without a single client. The concept was to go in all these small towns and give people $40 internet. They never even did any of that. It went bankrupt before it even opened. We have it in our gateway here because of the Enron building. And it sold for $131 million when they had just invested $1.7 billion in it because there were no clients. Yeah. The difference today, of course, with AI is the clients are the largest companies in really human history. Multi-trillion-dollar companies that have cloud revenue or advertising revenue, and they're putting a large amount of money into it. But I don't think it's a bubble. We had a robotics event here in Vegas last week, and we had a bunch of people coming in, and everybody's talking about agentic AI from a large language model standpoint. But they were a group that are building the brains that will go into robots, the brains that'll go into robo-taxis. And if you look at kind of the difference from a training standpoint, LLMs have done 100 trillion parameters of training if you look at LLMs and open world and different things. Multimodal for robots, if I build a brain that's got to go in that robot that's going to walk over there and deliver a drink, they've only done 1 million parameters.
Oh, wow. So just scratching the surface.
1 million against 100 trillion. Yeah. And so the amount of work that we have to do on the robotics side in terms of how many GPUs are going to be needed for that, literally, we've got to do 100 trillion parameters of how multimodal, how a robot actually, and they can't learn it from language, they've got to go learn it visually from a whole different way of training. I need to see that, and I need to know exactly how much pressure to put on that glass to pick it up. So I think we're a long ways away from a bubble. There could be a couple of things that bubble out, and one of them I think that's a little dangerous is behind the meter power with no pathway to being connected to the grid. Those are interesting 8 years out. We don't do that, and most of the big clouds don't do that. Everybody's still being very careful with that. But if there was a bubble, maybe that, but otherwise I think the GPUs are going to be needed for a long time.
Definitely. Thank you. One of the narratives that is out there is that the growth of data centers is a significant reason, certainly not the only, but one of the reasons that consumer electric power bills are rising. I mean, just last week in elections, or 2 weeks ago now, in the elections in Virginia and New Jersey, power bills were a big deal in those races. Same with the Georgia Utility Commission. Is there a backlash brewing?
Well, I think there is from maybe a couple of bad choices, not necessarily bad actors, but some things that some of the big companies did over the last 10, 15 years. Overseas, some stuff. Company shows up, there's a dam that's 100 years old. They make a deal to get 3-cent power off the dam. And then, of course, now there's new residential things coming online 3 years later, and obviously it's a little hard to build another 100-year-old dam. And so we, the people in that country, had to eat the costs on that, and that kind of made the industry look bad. But I'll give a perfect example here in Nevada. We're currently, on a path to consume 1/3 of the power in Nevada, just Switch, and really with
Sorry,
growth.
Can you repeat that, please,
Yeah.
for everybody?
Yeah, 1/3 of the power in Nevada actually is, the run rate that Switch has. We're the largest client for NV-Energy, and power rates for Nevada residents went down last year. And so this can be done really well. I think that the two big mistakes on that are, that people don't understand. Like, hey, are data centers good partners for the grid? Well, let's say I'm running 1 gigawatt of electricity. We run that 24 hours a day. It doesn't change. So at night, when everybody in the houses, all the businesses shut down, and they're not paying a power bill anymore, or a much lower one, the power plants run all night long. All those electrons eventually are wasted or only partially used. Nobody's helping pay for the grid at night. But the data centers come in and you go, well, no, I mean, in the winter, the whole state can run 3 gigawatts. So if we're running a gigawatt all night long, we're uniquely paying into the grid to support it and expand it and grow new things. And so that's one that gets missed a lot by all the kind of false narratives that are coming out in these states or these kind of hit pieces. Nobody really sits down and analyzes that. Done well, it's a great partner for the grid. The only way it's not a great partner for a grid is brownouts. And so let's say your state peaks at 6 to 8 gigawatts. You have maybe 12 times a year, if it's a hot year, where you're going to clip, the peaking ability of that state to the point where they're going, oh, we're going to have to brown out power somewhere. Of course, in the last 5 years, it's really changed on our side about going, well, no, just call us because I'm running a third of the power in the state. I'll just put X amount of buildings on generator for 3 hours, 12 times a year, and it won't affect you in any way. It'll never brown out because we could lower 500 megawatts if we wanted
so
to.
That flexibility is there.
It's absolutely there. It used to be harder to do because the clients wouldn't accept that, but that's all changed. Like the clouds really understand their responsibility and what they need to do to help, and to just easily go on generator for, sometimes it's 12 times a year, but it's like 19 minutes is all that was going to brown out. That's one of the outages. And so it's very easy to make data centers a partner with every community in terms of the grid.
So what you've just walked me through sort of runs against what we're hearing sort of in the press from certain politicians. This narrative, is out there, certainly. Does your sector or does the industry in general need to do a better job communicating that message to the public and to policymakers?
This is going to be a quick question. Yes. Yes, we do. Yeah, the fact that most of the world doesn't even know what I just explained. So I think after the new year, even just Switch itself, we're going to be spending quite a bit of time in Washington, quite a bit of time with our other states, letting people know.
As you talk to other colleagues in this space, other companies, is that something that you expect to see from others as well, a sort of effort to kind of perhaps better educate Washington and perhaps state capitals as well?
Yes, and the clouds. All 6 of the primary clouds understand that too. We have a group that I think will be getting together after the new year and really working on this problem.
I want to talk about nuclear in the midterm and the long term, and perhaps the very long term. So you're working with Oklo and other small modular reactor startups. Ultimately, looking out some number of years, are these types of units nice to have for AI growth, or will they ultimately be a must-have for AI growth?
And so they're a must-have, and I think it's the most interesting part of really what AI is going to give to humanity, and because we're a power company as much as we're a data center company. And AI is going to do all these amazing things, but because of the growth it's having, it's the only thing in the world that has really trillion-dollar expenses coming due, being paid by trillion-dollar companies that can actually pay the bill. And we are going to see really a revolution in energy that comes from the fact that AI needs this power. America's short a terawatt of electricity without AI or data centers. We actually own Terawatt America, and so that we have to build a terawatt of energy just to grow America correctly over the next 20 years. Then you add in AI and data centers, 80 gigawatts, 200 gigawatts, depending on what part of it you're talking about. But because of that, we are going to create, new clean fission is going to become a really viable energy source. And SMRs, but even just, all the new the 1 gigawatt nuclear plants, the primaries, those are all starting to kick in now. I probably could name 30 projects that are underway in the United States.
So you see the U.S. will start building gigawatt scale AP1000s or some other design?
And literally was looking at a design yesterday for 4 AP1000s. And so that's going to happen. I think the other thing that's going to happen about what AI really changes the world is that it's going to speed up fusion by really 2 or 3 decades. And that kind of, fusion changes all the things. And we've been, I started here in Nevada back 26 years ago. Our first client was the test site, Area 51. So I really understand nuclear, been doing that, from a clearance standpoint and everything my whole career. If you see what's going on kind of behind the scenes, the stuff that happened during COVID, there's some really great things that step forward. I thought it was maybe still 30, 40 years away, 2 years ago, with AI speeding it up. And that, the interesting part with fusion is it changes something for the world. Like we're talking about humanity. AI is going to do all these great things. But the number one source of poverty globally is energy poverty. if you could get to the point where energy is free, you can solve all food issues, you can solve all water issues. The ocean's big. It's 56% of the cost of desalination is energy. And so, I think we're on a really exciting path with not only AI going off and doing all the things it's going to do, but because of that, it's creating a whole new, power renaissance in the United States, where new clean fission, and Oklo especially, some of those things, NuScale, all our partners, really an exciting time for that. And I hope everybody understands that we have to embrace nuclear. Otherwise, AI is just going to burn a lot of fossil fuel, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of, I suppose my kind of hottest and most sophisticated take is that nobody really knows the future. That was a joke. So when we were chatting the other day, you talked about the need to sort of future-proof your operations and your infrastructure for your clients. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means? Because certainly there's just uncertainty piled upon uncertainty. One kind of hobby of mine is looking at demand growth estimates related to AI, but also all the many things that are even driving demand growth more. The uncertainty bands are so gigantic, as you know 10 times better than me. So what did you mean when you said you need to future-proof your operations for your clients?
Well, and so if the other thing that could be a bit of a bubble is, there's a race for AGI, and we know all the gentlemen that are involved with that. You've got 10, 15 people on Earth really wanting their name to be in the history book as I created AGI. So they're going very quick. In my opinion, they're going too quick with, really maybe $100 billion of data centers that are just kind of crypto shed 2.0 designs. It's a warehouse with a pipe in it, and they're going, well, we can liquid cool this stuff. The problem is if you look at the roadmap from NVIDIA, and if you look at Oberon, and then you jump all the way through, guys, to Kyber, Feynman, we're on a path right now to where, the stuff that we're currently building out in all the AI factories are 157 kW a rack. In just a year from NVIDIA, but also ARM, Renee's in town, and he's a Raiders fan, so everybody was over at the Raiders game last night. But guys, so ARM has a new design coming out by June, July of next year that's 500 kW a rack. The high side of Oberon is 365 kW rack, but jump forward to the final three steps. It's 1.2, 1.5, 1.7 megawatts per rack, already on the design table now. And so, these buildings that are being built can't really even go to that second generation that I talked about back on just the step to 300. And so it's a lot of, you kind of were out you'd seen the stuff we were working on, but with EVO now, EVO does 2 megawatts a rack now. And I started working on that 2 years ago, and part of that is because of our relationship with ARM and NVIDIA and Qualcomm and Broadcom and Marvell. They're all clients of ours. And so the building's designed seismically to hold 5 fluidic systems that are just gigantic. If you really look at how big this stuff needs to be to do 2 megawatts in every single rack. And then air, we can do now 180 kW of air in every single rack, and also that's design system plus system. These aren't just N crypto sheds. These are data centers that not only do AI better than AI and then grow through every one of those evolutions, is you could actually go back in time 5 years from now and just turn it into 180 kW air-driven data center for every rack, which there aren't any of those that exist anywhere else in the world anyway right now. So very modular, very fungible with those different things. And that's kind of the future-proofing side. You could be wrong just one generation in and not have a pathway, not have the seismic, not have the strength, the support. I've got to run another 24-inch line through this building to try to get to this new set of gear. The other one, too, is a lot of the cabinet design concepts that you see aren't really taking into effect what's happening with, say, Meta or Microsoft or ARM's 48-inch wide racks that come from the factory pre-populated, 48 inches wide, 5 feet deep. They'll have 2 sidecars on them at a future date, one for power, one for network. And so the stuff's just going to be much bigger than people are thinking right now. And designed wrong or poorly or too quickly right now really leaves this still a $3 billion data center not very usable in just a not very too short time frame in the future.
Thank you. As our time here runs down, I wanted to end with just a quick lightning round question. What is the biggest myth in this space that needs busting?
The biggest myth? How's this? It's kW per rack. I don't want to say that everybody other than us is lying, but they're all lying. All right.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you, Rob. Thanks for joining Axios today. Really enjoyed
thank you so much. Good to see you.